I'm sure that you've all heard the theory that when you're up material in chess, you should try to trade down. This theory uses basic rules of proportionality to try and win your games, because even a small advantage of a pawn will grow as the pieces are reduced. For example, if you're up one knight, which is worth 3 points with both sides having a full army of pieces, then you're only going to be 10% ahead. But if you're up a knight with only a pawn either side, then you're going to be 400% ahead and totally crushing the game. Of course, there'll be other factors at play here. If you didn't have this pawn on your side, then you wouldn't actually be able to win the game because of course a lone knight cannot checkmate the king, and even though you're 300% ahead, no one cares because the pony can't get the job done. But that's all besides the point, and I'm sure you get the general idea that proportionally your advantage increases as there are less pieces on the board. However, as I've gotten better at chess, I've started to realize that this process of thinking can be extremely damaging, especially when taken to the extreme. I will be showing 3 examples of games where I totally collapsed in winning positions just trying to trade off pieces without paying as much attention to what really matters. These games were extremely painful for me to review, so please do like the video so that you can help me recover from the torment that I put myself through reviewing these old games. All of this is why I've come up with a counter theory for improving intermediate players in particular, which is what I like to call win more. There's a dual meaning here, both in the strategy being to put pressure on the opponent and take a winning position to an even more winning position instead of just trading down, and also in the way that it will help you to win more of your games rather than letting big advantages gradually slip away and sometimes even turn around into those horrible losses. In these 3 positions that I'm about to show you, I'm going to show you how my mindset of trying to trade off material led to my position collapsing and ultimately losing the game. And after I show you how I lost, I'm going to show you how you can use the win more strategy in each of these positions to try and restrict your opponent's counterplay and take over the game with your extra material rather than just groveling to trade things off. So starting with game number 1, Black just played queen to h4 with a clear attack on the h3 pawn. In the game, I knew that I was up 2 pawns and was feeling good, so I wanted to exchange off the rooks. If you've been listening to what I just said, then you should know that trading off the rooks is definitely not something you should be doing here when up material. The reason is because we're simply giving black the open file, developing their rook and allowing them to maintain pressure on the h3 pawn. So after black captured the rook, I then played queen to g2, passive defense, guarding this pawn here. They played h5, I played rook to f1, once again trying to trade off more pieces, but this is such a passive way to play. They captured my rook, I took with the queen here, another mistake now, allowing the queen to infiltrate. First they took the pawn, and after I gave them a check, they just moved up. I gave one more check, but obviously I didn't want to draw here because I was still at material, so I played queen takes on g4, offering the queen trade once again. All I wanted to do was trade pieces, but of course my opponent knows that. They're not going to trade pieces with me. They give me the check, my king moves out of the way, they deliver a check here, by the way, blundering a queen, which is pretty funny, but I was so blindsided by trying to exchange off pieces that I just played queen to g2. Of course, they once again decline the queen trade, and this time go for all of my weak pawns with my now passive queen. The game ended fairly shortly after. They kept delivering checks, eventually winning all of my pawns, and once they won all of my pawns, trading the queens was no longer good. So after I gave a couple more checks, the king found shelter, and it doesn't really matter how the game ended, but I got checkmated. So running it all the way back, where did this game really go wrong? Well, I just had the simple move here, king to g2, holds the h3 pawn, doesn't give up the f-file. If black wants to exchange rooks with me, then happy days. I've traded off some material and improved the positioning of my queen. Black queen has nothing to do here. They have no control of the f-file. I can bring my own rook into the game. I can push Eddie the e-pawn down the board. There are so many easy ways to win this with white, but what you have to notice is that it all came from not just blindly exchanging rooks, giving black counterplay. You got to keep it together. Watch out for your opponent's threats in this situation. Keep it together. Moves like king to g2, they might not look fancy, but at the end of the day, that's what wins you games. On to the next game here. I am up a full piece. I've got this lovely knight in the center of the board. A very strong bishop, which is eyeing the g7 pawn, though I can't take it quite yet because that would lead to a fork. As well as that, my king's a little bit unsafe. Black's king is also in the center, so at the end of the day, I think the main difference here is that I have a knight for a pawn. White should be doing much better. But if you know how badly I was playing, or at least the style in which I was playing in all of these games that I've selected, you can probably guess the move which I played, which is the absolutely horrible knight takes on b6. Given an inaccuracy by the engine, but I'm going to upgrade that to a blunder. I think this is such a bad move. All I'm doing is removing my amazing knight from the board for black's bishop, which wasn't particularly good anyway, and allowing their rook to come into the game. From here, I continued trying to trade off pieces desperately. I wanted them to take with the pawn, probably wanted them to trade off queens as well, and then I would just win this endgame. But of course, black's not going to play ball. They play h3 now, trying to set up some checkmates over here like this. I play rook to e1, blundering directly into queen g6, queen g4 takes, king f1, and I lose the game shortly after. I'm just down a queen. So where did this position go wrong? Well, once again, you shouldn't be trading the knight for the bishop here. You're only helping black. You're allowing that rook into the game, removing the bishop, which really isn't doing a whole lot other than attacking a pawn. What you should try and play here is notice the big threats in the position which are possible, mainly revolving around h3 and queen to g6. And you can get out of this very easily with the idea king to h1. Just play king h1, rook g1. All of a sudden, I'm activating my pieces. By the way, g7 pawn now hanging because there's no more queen g6. So king h1 gets the king to safety, looks to activate my rook, maintains the status quo of this extremely strong knight in the center, and leaves black with this rook paralyzed over here behind the bishop, which isn't very good. One example of how well this game could go for white is that after castles, we just have the move knight to f6 here, killer move, because after the pawn can take, then we'll just deliver rook to g1, king h7, and queen to h5 with a ladder checkmate. But clearly you didn't have to really see any of this. All I want you guys to be able to understand is that trading our good pieces in particular for the opponent's bad pieces is not a good idea. Don't make trades if it's advantageous for them and good for you. You're much better off just applying more pressure, and eventually they're going to crack. Remember, you are the one up material, and one of the best things you can do when up material is launch an attack against the enemy, because they're going to have far less pieces to defend themselves with, and oftentimes you'll just overrun them with a nice checkmate, which is both great because everyone loves a good middle game checkmate, and also you get to train your tactics at the same time. And now we have the final loss that I have to relive for this video. Once again, knowing that I was a fiend for the trades, you can probably guess the move that I played here, which is queen to c6. This move, given an excellent by the engine, I'm going to give it a question mark. The engine is way too polite when it comes to converting advantages, because it's like, oh, everything's just winning here. What are you doing? You're up an exchange and a pawn. Engine doesn't care that I'm blundering pawns. It doesn't care that, I'm not playing the most accurate moves and I'm moving my queen from an active square to a passive square, because the engine sees that in all situations, black is still completely winning. But for a human, these advantages can quickly start to slip away, and the mental cost of feeling that slip away cannot be underestimated. So from here, my opponent played queen to f4, once again declining the queen trade. You see this in every single game. I'm trying to offer the queen trade, they decline. I continue trying to offer the queen trade. What's the idea of rook e8? I'm not just playing rook e8 to put the rook on the open file. No, I'm probably trying to trade the queens. They played bishop takes on a5, now collecting my free pawn. I played queen to b5 here, attacking the bishop and the pawn. But after a couple more moves, I tried to improve my position a little bit by moving the queen back and attacking this pawn, but simply missed that they could take my pawn here, which defends both. And I ended up losing this game in a really sad way after seeing them finally give me the queen trade that I wanted for so long. But then I just played rook d1, blundered my queen, which they took, and I ended up losing the game not too long after. Actually, it was quite long after, but you get the point. I ended up losing and was very sad. This one's slightly less clear than the other two. The other two are pretty cut and dry how bad the move was trying to change off the pieces. But queen to c6 is almost just as bad as the other two, because it's in the same spirit of trying to trade off, trying to play passive, just trying to get these end games, when what I should be playing is something like rook to c8, getting the rook to the open file and restricting white's movement significantly. For example, white cannot really move the bishop, because if they move the bishop, then the knight on e1 hangs. As well as that, they can't really move the knight, because then that would allow rook to c2 with the piggy on the second, which looks pretty crushing. So if white's not going to move any of their minor pieces, then maybe they can try and move a pawn, but something like f3 will just be met with queen to e2, invading all of these weak squares. Additionally, moves like b4 or b3 or a4 are also all extremely weakening. Let's look at something like this. I can just capture that guy, play something like rook to a8, and all of a sudden my rook is now coming down on the a file instead. So realistically, it's now white who has to offer the queen trade on favorable terms for black. Queen takes on f4 is now a great move because I'm not giving up anything for it. I'm not playing passively. I'm letting white come to me and beg me for that queen trade. You want your queen to be so active in the center of the board that the opponent has nothing left to do but try and give you their queen. And after the queen trade, I'm just going to show one really simple way that you could win this position with black, which is that after f6, you could play knight d3, trying to blockade the pawn here. And if white tries to bring their own king as well, then we just centralize our king first to the center. They can play like this, just continue taking the space over here. If they shuffle, something like bishop to f8, king d2, pawn to b4 looks very strong. You want to exchange off one pawn like this. Bishop is now in the game. And if they try and continue just moving their king around, then all of a sudden rook to e8 and the king is in big trouble. If you go to f1, then the white king comes into c4, attacking the knight and also pressuring the pawn. And if you go this way instead, then we can play king to e4, attacking the knight and now going after this pawn. So this position would be dead lost for white, and a great example of how you can use your material domination to just take control from the opponent, restricting their play and avoiding spoiling your advantages. So if you had to take away one thing from this video, it would quite funnily be, don't trade pieces unless it's good. This might sound like stupid advice because, well, obviously you want to try and play the good moves, but I actually see it all the time. People trading pieces, specifically myself in the past, in situations even when it worsens my position just because I've got that wrong mindset that I want to just trade off the material, get down to the end game where I have proportional advantage and then win the position. Instead, let your opponent come to you, let them come begging for that trade, and when they do, when it's good for you, be my guest, trade off the pieces, keep things under control, prevent their counterplay, and win your endgame. So yeah, I hope you all adopt the win more mindset, end up winning more games, and applying the concept in your own games. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in another one.